is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. He once told me that if you eat enough bananas, you could see your shadow in the dark. Stu Horvath.
What?
Bananas, they're like slightly like irradiated.
Really?
Did you ever hear that? I mean, I could be wildly incorrect about this. I'm probably wildly incorrect about this, and I know somewhere out there, someone's on the Google. But yeah, like bananas, like have like this like trace levels of like radiation.
Huh?
Yeah, and like not that anyone could ever in their lifetime eat enough of them that they'd like Hulk out, but it would be cooler if they did. It wouldn't be me because I fucking hate bananas.
I like a banana, but I do find that the smell of bananas is rather off-putting.
I think that's the thing for me. I think that like I taste the smell. And back when I was like, demonstrating Vitamix, I would be out there and like I'd have to put fucking bananas in every single recipe. And like eventually like I became, unless they were like super ripe, I kind of became nose blind to them.
Yeah.
I trained myself, but now, man, I can smell a banana from a distance and it just does not, like, my wife eats bananas like all the time and I'm like, oh God, just please brush your teeth before you kiss me.
Well, the problem is it's runts is the source of my problem. The banana runt.
That's it. And Laffy Taffy.
It tastes like bananas smell. Bananas don't taste like they smell, like coffee. But the runts, the flavor of runts has impacted my enjoyment of bananas in a
completely negative sense. So before we get into the episode, which is going to be about Shadowdark, I just want to mention Hambone's crowdfunding corner. I'm going to do it at the top of the hour because Meow Wolf is making a TTRPG. Now, for those of you who don't know, Meow Wolf, they make like immersive art installations. If you could imagine like living in a cartoon in weird worlds, like this is Meow Wolf. It's absolutely amazing. I've never been to one, but I get real jealous every time friends send me pictures of them. And I think there's one coming to New York soon, and I am dying to go to Meow Wolf. But last year, my buddy Tiger Wizard told me he is working on the Tavers Meow Wolf role-playing game, which is going to drop the day after this episode airs. Now, what's cool about the game is even if you are not a fan of Meow Wolf because you're just hearing about it for the first time, but you really like storytelling RPGs that are vibrant and expressive and just explosive in the type of art and world that you get to play in, it gives you all these new worlds that are going to be primed for exploration, like real collaborative, exquisite corpse type storytelling in the system. You're going to uncover mysteries, experience the strange and unknown, and you're rolling 2d8 to do it, to make your discoveries. The artwork, if you just Google this right now, you're going to see the artwork is insane. If you Google Meow Wolf, you're going to see the installations are insane. So, this is going to be one, and like, it's Tiger Wizard, man. If you're not familiar with Tiger Wizard, you're absolutely missing out. Tiger Wizard is one of the most prolific and imaginative artist that I know, and I'll just say this because he's my buddy, and I will have to look him dead in the eye when he hears me saying nice things about him at some point on the podcast. But just an artist, just amazing work. If you like fantasy and you like weird shit, he's your Huckleberry. But it's gonna be pretty cool. You're wandering through storyscapes and impossible landlines, and every memory you create becomes a power you can wield. So again, I'm going to the mattress for this one. Tavers, the Meow Wolf role-playing game by Tiger Wizard, will be dropping the day after this episode airs. And I'm sure there's like a ton of other people working on this as well, but I know Tiger Wizard, so he's the one going over in this Hambone's crowdfunding corner. But yeah, definitely, at the very least, check it out on Kickstarter the day after this episode airs. March 3rd is the day of launch. And now that I've just put my favorite artist over, let's talk about an RPG that I am just pleased as punch with, Shadowdark.
And it's certainly an art first kind of RPG experience, right?
And you know what? That's cool, I think. I think that it becomes a thing where we always talk about the cool part. One of the best parts about RPGs is the art. It's the art that lures you in, and it's the experience you get to have within that art that is almost secondary. So
I'm not going to lie, and I should probably put this up front. But when I got Shadowdark, I had known Lucas Court's art previously from just the Instagram, following on Instagram, but Shadowdark getting the book and with his rad cover art inside and interior art, I totally hired him to do the cover of my next
Oh, how could
book.
you not?
So it's just like, yeah, the Dungeon book has pretty fantastic Lucas Court art on it. So
listen, that's the kind of full disclosure that makes me really happy to know, because I was already excited for the book, and I think anyone who's experienced Monsters, Aliens, and Holes in the Ground is now even more pumped by this. But holy shit, man! Like, you know, the term fantasy heartbreaker I know gets thrown around a lot. You know, where people are like trying to essentially reimagine Dungeons and Dragons and put their own kind of spin on it, and it always ends up falling short. This is the farthest thing from a fantasy heartbreaker. This is an RPG that actually goes the distance. The cool thing about Shadowdark is it's actually really meant to be dangerous. Like I'm going to read it to you right from the book. It's a fantasy adventure game where you and your companions delve into buried ruins, lost cities, spider-infested forests, and even fearsome dragon lairs in search of gold and glory. But what defines the game is speed, danger, and simplicity. Magic is perilous, battles are fast and deadly, and being clever is crucial for survival. One of the things that I always wanted more out of TTRPGs was I wanted to be all killer, no filler, you know? And I tend to think that a lot of, especially sword and sorcery fantasy RPGs, they kind of get away from that in a way that's kind of annoying, where you get bogged down with, you know, the system and you get bogged down with the rules. But, you know, one of the things I appreciated most about this is just like right when you open the book, it lays out like difficulty classes for you. So easy is DC 9, normal is 12, hard is 15, and extreme is 18. And they give you some ideas like leaping a narrow chasm, sneaking up on an inattentive guard, DC 9. Like it gives you kind of a range, which I always think, and I think you might agree, as like a dungeon master, as a game master, as a keeper of secrets, sometimes giving out, you know, these checks seem kind of arbitrary. But this is definitely not it. And one of the cool things about it, I thought, was it really distills down the essence of what it is to be an adventurer and a dungeon crawler. You know, and granted, there are lots of other applications and different places you can go within this rule set, but like at the core of it, you know, the reason we all got to the table, I think it really just, it gets it down to its purest form, which it just got me so excited. I think I read the book in like a day, and I will tell you, dear listener, you've heard me say this before many, 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 many times on the podcast. Your old buddy HB isn't exactly known for being a reader. But I actually read pretty much this entire book in a single day. I went through it. I got a lot of cool ideas because it's a little bit of everything. You get like creatures, you get your different kinds of magic weapons and spells and everything that you need. It's a 325-page book, and on the inside and outside covers, you have like random encounter characters, and in the front, you've got like some weapons and stuff like that. So it's a complete book and pretty much what you need to get rocking and rolling in Shadowdark. It talks to you about how to design monsters, gives you monster generators, encourages you to make it weird. Like, and that's, you know, the thing that I think is, and I'm just rambling here because I'm pleased as punch. It's like 325 pages, and I read, dear listener, I read a book. It gives you everything you really need to rock and roll in RPGs, and I am grateful for that, because especially if you're gonna say be a complete, you know, ding dong like me, who's like, I didn't prepare anything. Like, this is the book you need if you're like, I didn't prepare anything, but it gives you everything you need to run on the fly. And I'm so excited about it.
So I wish I could. I'm sitting here trying to remember who said it. I read something somewhere recently in like the last couple days that referred to Dungeons and Dragons and its various shadows.
Yeah.
Whoever said it, that is a brilliant turn of phrase, because it's very true. D&D has cast multiple shadows throughout its history in the hobby. The hobby basically exists because of, I mean, initially Dungeons and Dragons wasn't a really well done game at a mechanical level, so a lot of people wanted to fix it. And that's sort of the first shadow cast. But in the ensuing decades, we've had a much more interesting kind of Shadow. There's folks who tried immediately to just fix the game, right? But then that leads almost immediately to stuff like Palladium Fantasy or Rollmaster, these big systems that are derived from D&D that really fit that fantasy heartbreaker model that you were talking about, where like they're just trying to like make these games and they wind up being sort of too complicated. There's a lot to love, but they're also really difficult to play. But then Shadowdark is part of a newer phenomenon that starts with Castles and Crusades, right? And like that is after the D20 bubble bursts, people are nervous about Dungeons and Dragons 3E and publishing for it as a third party. So people were looking for different ways to kind of continue to be D&D without being D&D. And Castles and Crusades is aimed at creating a old school experience using what is essentially a very stripped down 3.5 mechanical system. And the same thing's true of Dungeon Crawl Classics. Like that at its heart is D&D 3, I guess,
with more fun dice.
Yeah, and it, like just modified to heck. And that is also true of Shadowdark. It's base 5e, and it's fulfilling that same role as those other two games, where you've stripped out a lot of the stuff that makes 5e feel like 5e, and you've replaced it with things that make it feel more in line with the elusive idea of quote unquote old school play. The more I think about these things, and this is probably not useful to the most average folks who are playing role-playing games, but I find OSR and old school generally to be like so nebulous a term at this point that it's not very useful. But like some other things, you kind of know it when you see it. Yeah. There is something about it. Is it old school? I don't know, because old school comes with this nostalgia frame and like I don't know. It's definitely a lighter style of play that prefers sort of testing players over character sheets and abilities and all that stuff. We know it when we see it, right? Like I could list a whole bunch of things, and then people will be like, well, but that, you know, but and find exceptions and contradictions. But like there is a vibe. It has more emergent play, you know, lots of tables.
Yeah, we do love a table in this house.
So yes, Shadowdark taps into this nebulous idea of old school. But I think that there's a couple mechanical things that are actually really interesting and innovative about the game that bear highlighting, that don't actually have much connection to established ideas of the old school.
Are you going to talk about the shadows?
Well, I was gonna talk about always on initiative first.
Yeah, go for it.
Which I think is like, it's probably the thing I see people debating most about Shadowdark. I think it's my favorite bit of Shadowdark because it organizes play in such an elegant way. Basically, initiative is always on. You're basically always acting in turn, even during social situations or downtime or whatever. And it brings order to the table in a way that I can see why it would chafe at some people. But also I think that the people that it is going to chafe most are the people who want the spotlight the most.
You are 100% right about that.
And it really levels the playing field for everyone at the table in a way that is really refreshing. And it does it in a way where it's like, once you just sort of relinquish yourself to it, it's not calling anybody out. It's not making anybody uncomfortable. It's really just making it everybody's time at the table as even as possible. I think that's pretty cool. And that's definitely not an old school thing.
No, definitely not. When I read through the book the first time, I was like, I guess the best way I can describe it, you know, talking about, because, you know, you're right. The title of old school becomes kind of nebulous in the way that, like, you know, back in like the early 2000s, like you see bands like who were like, didn't want to say they were emo. Like, oh, we sound like Radiohead. And you're like, what the fuck does that even mean? You know? But then you hear them and you're like, yeah, you don't sound like Radiohead. And that's okay. But there is that thing where, you're trying to distill the essence of something down, and maybe you don't hit the mark, but this one does. And I liken it to like the idea of Ford versus Ferrari, where Ford wanted to prove that we could still do it. Ford as a company, not like, the Henry Ford. I think he was long dead at that point, but hopefully. But against Ferrari, which is like probably the fastest car in the world at that point, and they kept stripping down the Mustang until it got to a point where it could surpass the Ferrari, and it could beat the Ferrari on an even surface in a flat race. And I liken what's happening here with Shadowdark to that. It is Ford versus Ferrari, where everyone knows what 5e OSR in the broad strokes, trad D&D can do, but they pulled all the bullshit out. And they made it to a point where, like, if you want to have a right over the plate experience and, maybe you don't want it that dangerous, you can do that. I think you can do that in Shadowdark. I think it keeps it very simple, and you kind of always know what you're getting yourself into, right? And the game master, the dungeon master can always steer the ship because everything is so clearly laid out. It's easy to, kind of stay in your own lane, with how the book is kind of built out for you. But if you want it dangerous and you want to go into like crazy modes of play, they give you the option to do that. Like if there's a thing called modes of play here, which I'm looking at, where like you have blitz mode, where your light timers last 30 minutes, chaos mode, reroll initiative at the start of every combat round, deadly mode, fatality mode, grinder mode, hunter mode. Like it gives you really like simple bullet pointed options on like, hey, if you want to get the job done like this, here's how you do the hokey pokey. I think that, like, as a person who's been running games as long as I have, like it was like such a like refreshing thing. I liken it to, you're on a hot day, you're mowing the lawn, and you have that like ice cold beer, and you're like, this is the greatest sip I've ever taken in my life. And as far as the Dungeon Master goes, like this kind of feels like that sip. But the real hook that everyone always was talking about with Shadowdark was the darkness, because it's called Shadowdark. It's in the name. And at first I was like, so that's it? Like, is that, people are kind of bad at explaining stuff. I'm probably not doing this justice right now, but I'm just really excited about it. The idea is that you don't, and I'm going to read it right from the book, you don't let light sources be set it and forget it. You as characters must protect your light source and keep them from going out. And when you think about dungeon crawling, when you think about going into the woods, when you think about like you're in a haunted house or a castle or whatever, like there's no like electricity, there's no light bulbs, there's no like dimmers on the wall to give you ambiance. There is just the light that you have. And it's crazy because now you've got enemies trying to stop your light. You've got spellcasters trying to doink your light. You got environments now messing with you. Like the environments in the area become that much more deadly. And if the light goes out, you're in the dark. For me, conceptually, that also makes it so at least one person in your party has to hold the torch, which is going to either inhibit or just flat out like stop them from doing certain things. And then they're also now trying to protect themselves from getting killed, but now it's like, oh, rain, bad, wind, worse. You have a dud torch, falling rocks. There's so many different ways it could go wrong for you now, and it really does create that like urgency to make decisions, which I think is a spectacular thing. As much as autonomy and the players being able to do the things they want to do is so important, I think it becomes equally important to have them in a place they have to make decisions and not be paralyzed by choice, where it's like, okay, we need to figure this out now. I think it makes the gameplay so much more efficient and exciting. Everyone's like, I don't know, it's a door, and then there's a door down there too, and I don't know. Like, make some choices, folks. It's party time.
Yeah, and the torch mechanic is interesting too because it introduces real time into the game. Each torch only lasts an hour of real game time. So
yep.
You have, theoretically, you could have an unlimited number of torches, but it's going to go out naturally in an hour, and then you have to decide what you're going to do. Or like, you staying? Are you leaving? And then on top of it, yeah, like the person holding it's a target. There's all sorts of things that can impact that. I think that Shadowdark sort of gestures, I don't know how effective it is ultimately, but like we've talked about this before, underground is horrible. Like It's
Oh, yeah.
just like the real world underground. It's like outer space. It's trying to kill you constantly. And so you can do things like have gas pockets and updrafts and unexpected dripping and all of that stuff imperils your light source. And if it goes out, you don't want to be down there. And once the light goes out, it's not like you all die, but you attract new monsters constantly, and they do. Are they more effective at combat? They can see in the dark?
Yes. Under monster attributes, all non-humanoid monsters are dark adapted. So they can ignore the penalties of total darkness, which is awesome.
They start rolling crits and stuff, or like they have a better critical damage threshold or whatever when it's dark. And all of that stuff works really great. It reminds me of, I don't remember, infravision in the game in mainline D&D changed a whole bunch over the first 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that it was, and there's infravision and basically like infrared. There's also heat vision. Anyway, it's a big mess. If you read the rules, you can tell that everybody writing the rules is sort of just like, this is like really hard to implement in the game. And that's why we have dark vision now, which is just like a magical hand waving, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's one of the versions of the game is just like people can't see in the dark, like players can't see in the dark, but monsters can, and evil aligned characters can. But if you befriend a monster, it loses its ability to see in the dark. It's just like, that's what we're going to go with. That's how we're going to do the rules.
Yeah.
I think that might be the Holmes basic. But yeah, there's all sorts of fun weirdness when it comes to seeing in the dark in mainline Dungeons and Dragons. And I think that Shadowdark is really nice in the way that it is just like, you need a torch to do that. And if it goes out, you are effed.
Yeah, sideways. Yeah, I mean, it's great. And again, I'm raving about this because I want to play more D&D. Like as a person who got started in this hobby playing D&D with Stu, I want to play more D&D, but I don't want to play D&D. You know, and I think this is exactly the game that I would want to play. And listen, like, you don't have to do all the shadow stuff. You don't need to, like, you know, you're not limited to having to do that. But as an option, I think it's incredible. And I think as a concept, as a hook, I think it's so refreshing and exactly what it needs to be. But, you know, for me, trying to bring in new players, like, the combat system is superb. It's simple, you know? Melee attacks, D20, strength, relevant bonuses. Hit the target, equal or to or greater. Bob's your uncle. Range attack, same thing, but with dex. Casting a spell, you know, they explain it pretty seamlessly. But death is pretty cool because if you hit 0 hit points, you fall unconscious and you're dying, right? You get a death timer. You roll a d4 in your con, and you have that many rounds to be healed or stabilized, or you die. Elegant, simple.
Able to die.
Yeah.
It makes the game more dangerous. You're not superheroes.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've been, so my, you know, I got real fat. Let's be real about it. I'll be very honest about it. I got big, and my doctor's like, you need to walk an hour a day on the treadmill. So I've been walking an hour a day on the treadmill. I've been watching different movies. I started watching Heat the other day. I watched a lot of different stuff, but I've been watching the Dimension 20, the first season of Dimension 20, the Fantasy High, because I love Brendan Lee Mulligan. I think the dude's funny as shit, and the game is pretty awesome. I mean, they're essentially playing like 5e D&D. They don't call it 5e D&D, but you're listening to it and you're like, all right, that's 5e, you know, or their own version of it. And, you know, they had to do death saves, and they have, you know, the one person went down, they did the death save, and it was like, oh no, I blew my roll. Now I go down a little further. Like, and you're never really in any danger unless you roll like a natural 1 on like your first or second death save. You're really in no danger. And then that was it. Like they ended up bringing the person back up. One person got beat up so bad they died. I forget what it was. I'm sweating at this point, like as I'm on this treadmill. But like I love this idea so much better because the reality is you can die. Like if you have a low con and you roll a 1 on that 1d4, you know, it again brings your group to make decisions. And I think that is, I think death should never be able to be put on the back burner in an adventure, which is like, yeah, you'll be fine.
I think that 5e and a lot of games, they underestimate how enjoyable character death is. Like, yeah, if you're playing like a super narrative game and you everybody's trying to be like the chosen one, yeah, I can see how death is a bummer. But like when your characters are more disposable, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but I've mentioned it a couple places that I'm helping play test a Call of Cthulhu scenario. And
oh, nice.
And my first time playing Call of Cthulhu, which is like crazy since I've run it so much.
Yeah, like three decades plus of running it, and now you just finally actually get on the other side of the screen. Oh, I love it. That's delicious.
Basically, at the end of the scenario, there was a thing that my character, I was certain that we needed to blow this thing up, and I was a geologist, and I had access to dynamite, so I made sure that I had dynamite, and the cultists, messed up the dynamite and the fuse, and I was knocked out, but I was not dead. I was just laying on the ground, and I used my shotgun and I shot the dynamite, and it created an explosion that was way, way out of proportion with what I expected, and it killed everybody, me, all the other players, all the bad guys. And I'm never going to forget that moment.
Yeah.
It was great. I missed with the shotgun the first time, and the second time I got it. And it was just like, everybody was just like, oh boy. And like, yeah, it's a bummer that he died. My character died, but like, it was also like amazing because he died and he blew up a city block with him,
Hell yeah, man. See, that's the kind of shit I love.
Yeah, and I think that if you make your characters so powerful that like that death is never an option, you really rob yourself of the. There's been so many times in the West Marches game, which is OSE, and it's very, very fragile, where people just the one time when the thief got picked up by the rock and just like they see the rock coming, the rock gets its first attack because it has initiative. It dive bombs the thief, Zach's thief, pulls him up into the air and leaves. And that was it. The character was dead. There was nothing to be done for it. And like, I think that everybody who was playing that session was absolutely terrified, and B, will never forget that particular character's death, Zach included. And it was just like, there's a beauty in that. It's like horror movies in a way. The kills are sometimes the point,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and also like, there's always that one character that's got plot armor.
Yeah.
To a degree. So, it's cool when it keeps you guessing. I could go on all day about this. The one thing I was looking for before, there is an actual thing for downtime, which I think is cool. And they actually use the term carousing.
Yeah.
Where you are encouraged to carouse to celebrate your heroic exploits, and there's a whole chart for it. It's pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked on it, man. It's been a while since I've come across like a sword and sorcery type system that I was like, holy shit, this is exactly like what I'm looking for. Like sometimes you wake up in the morning and there's something you want to eat, but you don't know what it is, but you know the taste that you want, and then like you finally get it and you're like, this is exactly like the kind of sandwich I wanted to eat. That's what Shadowdark is, man. It really does. It really does give you the experience you want and you were hoping for a sword and sorcery type game. Kelsey Dion is the writer, designer, and layout person for this book. Just absolutely spot on. I'm going to say something I don't say often, and I will probably rarely ever hear me saying this again. I think it's probably a near perfect RPG. And as far as a person who runs them, as far as a person who plays them, as far as an overall consistent experience throughout the entire book that doesn't break its own rules, it doesn't break the game and contradict itself. From A to B, it is a straight line. And I am, as a game designer myself, I'm kind of in awe of it. And I am so excited to play it. Like a buddy of mine wants me to teach his kid how to play D&D. And because they're really like enamored with the idea of D&D. I'm going to say it's D&D, but I'm going to teach a kid how to play Shadowdark because it's so much better.
You're not the first person I've heard say that. And I think D&D asks too much of its players,
Especially new ones.
For sure. I mean, the hobby generally has had an issue historically since the very beginning with bringing new people in. It's hard to even explain what the game is. But I just think that in general, I think that D&D asks too much of its players. I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Like, I don't think that it's like a punishable offense, but I think that if you recognize that like it's asking a lot of its players, and you see something like Shadowdark that asks less, I think that if you look at it in those terms, it makes a whole lot of sense to introduce people with something like that. Even like a DCC funnel, I think does a better job of kind of like getting across the D&D experience without bogging down the D&D with the D&D rules, because like there's just a rule for everything, and I don't know if you need all that, especially for new players. Like once you know it and you've gotten into it, it's a different equation. But I have definitely heard a lot of people. It used to be for a while it was not Apocalypse World, Dungeon World was sort of like the one. It's like I just told them that this is what Dungeons and Dragons is, and now I hear Shadowdark more and more in that sentence.
And honestly, again, D&D is why we are all here. I love Dungeons and Dragons, The Fire of a Thousand Burning Suns. I want to play Shadowdark, and I want to teach people how to play Shadowdark. And then if they want to get into D&D, cool. Whatever game makes you feel like psyched and happy to be at the table. But like for a learning experience right off the bat, I don't think you could do better than Shadowdark. It also has like a sample play section, which I think is amazing as well, because I think that's something that's sorely missing from a lot of core rule books. So it really, I don't know, I've never played D&D before. You read that and you're like, oh, I could do that. That's all I got to do. Like, I think it really lowers the bar for accessibility. It lowers the bar for like, entry, I guess is the better term for it. I want to quick put over the artists, Lucas Court, Brandon Gilliam, Jesse Egan, Yuri Perkowski Domingos, Matt Morrow, Matt Ray, Mark Lyons, Abdul Latif. The art in this book is everything that you hear us get excited about whenever we talk about tabletop RPGs. Spectacular, real cool stuff, real weird stuff, real dark stuff. And one thing I got to say, and I give them so much credit for, you would think I'm sponsored by this company, but I'm not sponsored by no one. I've been trying to sell it since the 90s. Nobody's buying. You can go to thearcanelibrary.com right now, which is the website where you can buy all this stuff. But if you just want to try it out and see what I'm talking about, they have a Shadowdark RPG Quick Start set. It's a PDF. It is free $99. You can just go and download it. It is friggin' awesome. 268-page digest-sized booklets that are in PDF form. Gives you all you need to play and run Shadowdark for first to third level characters. You get a little dungeon in there, Lost Citadel of the Scarlet Minotaur. You get maps, you get spells, you get magic items, 52 monsters, 4 core classes, full character creation rules. I mean, basically, they're just giving you the system. Right, but you should buy the whole ass book because it's something that you're actually going to pull on and off your shelf. But yeah, thearcanelibrary.com, Shadowdark RPG Quick Start Set PDF. Yeah, that's all I got today, man. I got real hype about this.
I just want to say that I think that generally in the hobby we are too precious about the idea of Dungeons and Dragons and what that is and consists of and means. And I think that I mean, it's a brand that's owned by a corporation, and we could ignore that if we like. Playing Shadowdark is playing Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think that there is really a meaningful distinction between that. Like, it is different from playing Call of Cthulhu, but it is not, I don't think, really functionally different from playing OSC or DCC or mainline D&D. Like they are all that's sort of what that person meant when they said D&D and its shadows. It's still, the root is there, and you're getting the fundamental experience of Dungeons and Dragons, which is bigger than the game that's produced by the corporation.
There you go. Well, it's been another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG podcast, and one where I finally gush about something. Stu, where can people find you on the internet?
VintageRPG.com. I have figured out the 2027 posts. I told you to get in touch last week. You didn't. And now you're you're out of luck until 2028.
Stu works fast. Stu types even faster.
I'm procrastinating. I didn't want to write something else, so I wrote that.
There you go. You can find me across the internet at John McGuire RPG on the Instagram and on Blue Sky. If you want to pick up any of my awesome RPGs that I had a hand in writing and creating, you can go to hamandeggpublishing.com. It takes you to our Etsy, where there are a bunch of different books and a bunch of different flavors and a bunch of different styles that you are going to love to play. Oh my God, I actually did. I read another book. I read actually 3.5 books. So I'm going to just a quick little sidebar here. Dungeon Crawler Carl kept coming up everywhere. And I was like, with lit RPGs, which I didn't understand, because when I heard lit RPG, I was thinking like fighting fantasy, where it's like, it's a novel, but it's a playable novel. This is not a playable novel. The Dungeon Crawler Carl, essentially, like, the short version is an alien race like collapses the world, and whoever gets down into the dungeons has to compete on like a dungeon TV show. It's kind of like Mojo World or like, Arcade from the X-Men, but a lot more fantasy and whatever. And essentially, like, as they level up, they talk about their stats, they get prizes and they get books, and like, they get like weapons and this and that. So that's the RPG-ness of it, is that you're actually, instead of like doing it in a video game, you're reading it. But I don't know, man. Like, so I've been trying to obviously like stay off social media at night. I've been trying to actually read more. So I bought this one book and I got it for $5 on the Kindle store. Because I read them on the Kindle, and I read it in like 2 days. It was like a 300-page book. And Hambone, who doesn't read, I can read. I just choose not to. But I really enjoyed it. And I mean, there's some things I love, there's some things I didn't love, but I enjoyed it enough that I got the next one, and I banged it out in 2 days. I got the next one, I banged it out in 2 days. So like, I'm on book 4 of like 7. It's pretty fun. But yeah, Hambone read a book. I did it. I read 3.5 at this point. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really help other listeners to find us. If you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerpg. We got a lot of really cool stuff going on the Patreon, including early release episodes for as little as $1 a month at some point between Friday and Sunday, depending on when we record them during the week. Patreon.com/vintagerpg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor. Thanks for listening. The Vintage RPG podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dead Go West. Art by Schaefer Brown. Edited by R. Alex Murray. Check us out at vintagerpg.com.